think the concern about Israel's northern fronts has been ongoing since October the 8th, when they joined this fight in order to harass Israel and Israelis post the massacre of October the 7th. But it also predates that. Up in the north, in southern Lebanon, with Hezbollah at the helm, we have a terror army that is armed with about 150,000 munitions aimed at the state of Israel, with the intent to fire those at the state of Israel at the time of its choosing. And what you're seeing by way of these drones is that those munitions and those missiles that have been stockpiled over a period of several years have now been added to by what is effectively almost a tailor-made rudimentary air force that is wielded by Hassan Nasrallah of Hezbollah. We're seeing the increased testing of drones, the ability by Hezbollah to penetrate into Israel's northern airspace by way of the drones, and seeing the effectiveness of that. So this is a growing concern when you marry the use of commercially available drones with the arsenal buildup that we've seen, as I mentioned, over the past few years. You're seeing a very, very potent threat emanating from the north, one that is far greater than anything that could emanate from the Gaza Strip. And given that Israel has seen the dangers and the harm and the damage that can be inflicted upon its very way of life from the Gaza Strip by way of a weaker enemy when compared to Hezbollah, one has to conclude that Israel, at some time in the very near future, is going to have to take the fight to Hezbollah, change the status quo along Israel's northern border, and move Hezbollah back at least beyond the Litani River. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the drone attack. Another couple of things that we're seeing is the intensive efforts of the US envoy, Amos Hochstein, to broker some sort of a deal that would bring about a cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. I'm very uncomfortable with the wording that Hochstein is deciding to use when he speaks about ending hostilities across the blue line, because he's referring essentially to the partition between Israel and Lebanon that is central to Resolution 1701. And that partition line, the blue line, if we were to return to the status quo prior to October the 8th and go back to things as normal, it would require that Israel accepts upon itself, really, a status quo that is in no way, shape, or form acceptable. What people need to realize is that the Americans will not have to live with the outcome of an unacceptable status quo. Israelis will have to live with that outcome, and therefore Israelis must take matters into their own hands and drive, as I said, Hezbollah back beyond the Litani River. Some years ago, the Israel Defense Forces disrupted a long-standing, concentrated, focused effort by Hezbollah to drill tunnels into northern Israel from southern Lebanon for the very purpose of overwhelming and overtaking Israeli towns along our northern border, taking hostage Israeli residents within those towns, and even taking those residents back into Lebanon. I've personally been inside those terror tunnels that were being built by Hezbollah. They are an impressive military or terror feat. But of course, that feat has been undertaken with the specific goal of terrorizing Israelis. And to your point and to your question about whether or not abducted Israelis from northern Israel could end up being taken to Iran, the answer is, of course, yes. We've seen that Iran has essentially built a land bridge from Iran into Iraq, over into Syria, and then into Lebanon. And that land bridge can be used as a two-way mode of transportation. So absolutely, if Israeli hostages were to be taken, you could see them being transported over to other countries along that land bridge. I don't know that Iran would necessarily want to take Israeli abductees all the way to their homeland there in Iran, but certainly in the no man's land that is various parts and areas of Iraq, one could see a situation where abductees would be taken there and held there. I personally trained several times when I was an IDF reservist for the eventuality that there would be a massive attack from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon into the state of Israel. It seemed then like a very dangerous prospect, but only a prospect Today, that seems like a possibility. First of all, I think it's very important that Israel ratchets up its military pressure on Hezbollah. At the moment, the opposite dynamic is at play. It's Hezbollah's terror pressure that is being wielded against Israel. To this point, since October the 8th, when Hezbollah joined into the fray, Israel has eliminated about 345 operatives of Hezbollah inside southern Lebanon, a couple of them over in Syria as well. That's not sufficient. We need to see a far more intense attack upon Hezbollah's capabilities, and we need to see that come about forthwith, because what Hezbollah has achieved is the evacuation and the displacement of about 60 to 70,000 Israelis who have been moved from their homes in northern Israel, are living in temporary accommodations throughout the states of Israel, south of the city of Haifa. And they have no idea, these Israelis, when they will be returned, under what circumstances they will be returned, and what level of safety they can presume will be provided for them by the Israeli government and the Israeli defense establishment in the event that they do return. Now, you asked what might change the calculus here. What might change the calculus is essentially a miscalculation by Hezbollah, a detonation of critical infrastructure, the actual not only targeting but hitting and rendering destroyed communication centers for Israel, hitting population centers for Israel, damaging civilian infrastructure for Israel, or a massive attack on a military installation. All of that could end up bringing about a tremendous escalation and much more intensity when it comes to the nature of the fighting by Israel against Hezbollah. Now, the Americans are currently saying that they are not convinced that Israel could carry out an effective and speedy demolition of Hezbollah's munitions capabilities in the event that the Israelis, that we decide to move forward. Israel is determined, however, that the case is the opposite of that they actually can significantly degrade and downgrade Hezbollah's aerial capabilities very swiftly, but that would need to be coupled with a determined ground incursion into southern Lebanon by the Israel Defense Forces. That may come about when the intense fighting inside the Gaza Strip begins to ebb, and that is expected to take place within the next 3 to 5 weeks, as the IDF undertakes the important work of mopping up and dismantling Hezbollah's remaining battalions inside the area of Rafah.